Welcome into the show, everyone. I'm your host, the Unhinged Father. Hope you're all having a fantastic week so far. Let's go ahead and jump right into the show. So, as I've talked about a little bit before, I've been doing a pretty good job of indoctrinating my kids into listening to good music. Music I like, music I think that's good for them to listen to, rock and roll. Yeah, we don't really go rap just because I don't play anything that has like cuss words or anything like that in it yet. And, we don't just listen to that kind of stuff. I also will, in order to appease my wife, and because I think the kids like it as well. We got some kids song in there. I got some Skidamarink, Little Baby Shark, some Goldfish song. Shit, might even throw the Kangaroo song in there again. Anyways, all that besides the point. This week, I was in the car with both of my kids. I put on a song. I was feeling like Linkin Park, threw on their Essentials playlist, and One Step Closer to the Edge came on. And I don't know who's familiar with that song. Great song. Grew up to it. Just a lot of angst and anger and just like, get out of my room, dad vibes. Anyways, at the end of the song, the dude just starts screaming, "Shut up," over and over again. Just fucking, "Shut up when I'm talking to you." Like, for about a minute straight. The song's only like 2.5 minutes, and like a minute of it is him just saying, "Shut up." And I sat there and I never thought I'd be like this because, as many of you know, I've got a mouth like a fucking sailor. And I've had to be very conscious about trying to ensure that I'm not cussing or saying bad things around my kids, because God help me if my kids curse or say something bad and it fucking comes from me. That would be the end of it. My wife would be so pissed off. Anyways, we're back. This guy's just saying "shut up" over and over again. And I couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. I'm like, shit, do I need to like change the song? Do I like draw attention to the fact that he's saying "shut up" over and over again? And it just made me think, like, there's all these like little phrases that we use all the time or that we say as adults that I really don't want my kid to say. Like, he said "doo-doo head" the other day towards someone, and I'm like, hey, we don't say that shit in this household, motherfucker. We're nice here. We don't use potty words like that. Anyways, he did say, he said "doo-doo head," and he was talking about someone. We're like, dude, don't do that. Don't say "shut up." Don't say these things. And so it's interesting as a parent, all of these songs that you're like, no, there's no cussing in that. And then you hear them say something like "shut up" or "hell" or "damn." And you're like, oh, fuck, I can't even listen to this stuff with my kids. So yeah, not where in particular I wanted to go with that. Just an interesting observation as I've become more and more ingrained into my life as a dad, realizing that there's things that were just so not a big deal to me in the past that I really have to be intentional about and I pay attention to now. Kind of along those same line, a little bit of a funny story. I was talking to my son, putting on the older one, 4-year-old, putting on his socks, and he decided it would be a fun game for him to start replacing the first letter of the word sock with different letters until he landed on F and he starts saying "fuck." And, part of me is just like, all right, dude, we can't say that word. I was like, when I first heard it, like I had like a drop in the pit of my stomach until I realized what he was doing. He's just playing a game. There was no malintent behind it. He wasn't trying to say like "fuck," like the actual word. He was just like "fuck." But he kept saying it over and over again. And so I decided I'm not going to draw attention to it. I'm not going to like flip out and tell him we don't say words like that, because then he's going to know that it's a bad word and it's like a no-no word. And so he's going to come back to it because he got this reaction out of me. So I just kept on saying like, no, it's socks. And then he's like, "fuck." And I'm like, "sock, fuck, sock, fuck," just back and forth. And eventually he switched it from fuck to like talk. And so I'm like, no, so I just kept on going, "sock." And eventually we dropped it. We moved on. I haven't heard the word since. So hopefully I handled it the right way. But it was just like, I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for you to start saying cuss words and start pushing the boundaries with your language here. And speaking of being a parent, something else that came up, I saw a couple of Instagram posts on this. I don't know how it ended up in my algorithm. But we've talked about the DINKS before, dual income, no kids. And I saw a couple of stories this week that were written by people that don't have kids, don't want to have kids. And they were basically talking about how they're always seeing parents try to pretend like they don't have kids, or parents are talking about how, oh, I wish I didn't have kids anymore. And I wanted to address this because, yes, you're right. You are going to have people that say, God, I can't remember the last time when I didn't have kids, didn't have these responsibilities. Or like, oh, I wish I could have like a day where I didn't have my kids and I didn't have this responsibility. And that's because having kids is hard. Having kids is a sacrifice. Yes, it is fucking exhausting to put someone to sleep, them wake up, put them back to sleep. They wake up coughing at 2 a.m. They're up all night. You're rocking them. They're up at 5:30 in the morning in your bed. They had a nightmare. And then they get to go and like have naps during the day or stay in bed. But you got to get up. You got to go to work. You got to get shit done around the house. You don't have that downtime as a parent. So you're right. It's just like someone fantasizing like they don't have responsibilities. Similar to someone being like, oh God, I wish I didn't have to work for a day. I don't think that parents truly wish that they didn't have kids, because then that means that they wouldn't have these little bundles of joy and these little pains in their asses around them all the time. I've said it before. I'll say it 100 more times. Having kids has been the best thing for me. That doesn't mean that I'm sitting here and telling everyone to go out and have kids. It's not for everyone. Au contraire, I would probably say some of you motherfuckers shouldn't have kids. I don't trust you to have kids. I don't want you to have kids. But for those of you that are up for the fucking task and want to have kids, go for it. It's the fucking best thing in the world. And it's also the hardest thing in the world. It is going to test you in every possible arena of your life. So just like in Men in Black, when they're like, hey, is it worth it? Yeah, it's worth it if you're strong enough. It also got me thinking about how a lot of these articles and a lot of these, one of the people I saw on Instagram that was making this video about how it's so great to like not have kids and never plan on having kids, and kids are the worst, which they can be sometimes. Kids can be absolutely the worst. But they're all like between the ages of like 28 to like, I'd say 40, maybe 45. And like, yeah, I don't think you're going to regret not having kids during those ages. That's not the time that I think you're going to be like, oh, fuck, my life is meaningless. I have nothing bigger than myself in my life that I'm working towards. It's going to be when you're in your like 50s or your 60s or your 70s or on your fucking deathbed, and all you're surrounded by is the cool stuff you were able to buy because you didn't have kids. You weren't spending money on them. When I see people write these articles and they're just like, you wish you could be like us and not have kids, not have responsibilities. You envy us, you idiot parents. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes maybe we envy you right now because I just want to wake up on a Sunday morning at like 6:30, read a book, drink some coffee, maybe have a mimosa, and not have to worry about taking a toy away from someone because they weren't sharing, or fucking having someone shit their pants and having to clean that up, or I don't know, you made the pancakes the wrong way with not enough chocolate chips, and so there's just a meltdown. Yeah, sometimes I think that would be nice if I had one day like that. But when the time comes and my kids are older and hopefully I have grandkids, and when I'm sitting there on my deathbed and I'm surrounded by family, as long as I don't fuck it up, just because you have kids and you have grandkids doesn't mean that they're going to love you. You got to try hard. You got to do good. Got to do good by them if you want them to be around when you're older. It's not just a fucking free ride then either. But hopefully I'm surrounded by family and I'll leave a legacy here more so than just the things that I did or the things that I bought. And if you don't want that, cool. I don't give a fuck. You live life the way that you want. I'm going to live life the way that I want. But when you start coming after me and you're like, you envy me, don't tell me what I want. Shut your mouth. Go kick rocks. You have a stupid name anyway, you fucking dinks. And just going in a completely different direction here. Well, maybe not a completely different direction, but I was going to do this as one of the shorts, which I apologize, didn't do a short this week. It has been a crazy week for me and my family. I haven't had any time. I'm actually sitting here right now at nighttime, not the morning, recording this podcast the night before it's going to come out. So I get to record it tonight, edit this shit tomorrow, and release it then. But I was going to do kind of an overview of a novel that I read last year. And I think it's one that's pertinent for this time in society and just how things have been going. But it's a book that I read back in high school and then reread, like I said, last year. Animal Farm by George Orwell. A lot of you may know Orwell wrote 1984 is probably his more popular novel. But Animal Farm essentially follows a farm. There's a shit farmer. The animals stage a coup d'etat because they're tired of doing shit for this guy. They end up winning. There's two pigs that come into power and basically are the leaders of the farm, Snowflake and Napoleon. They have differing opinions on like politics and ways to govern. They write down these rules or these laws that are to govern the farm on the wall for everyone to see to keep it fair for all of the animals. But essentially, Napoleon comes to power, kicks out Snowflake, and starts to run the farm similar to like how the humans did. It's just like this example of power corrupting until the farm deteriorates basically back to where it was when the farmer was running it, when the humans were running it. And then this final scene, you see Napoleon and his other pigs, and they're in a room with these humans that they're doing business with, playing poker. And the pigs get up on two legs, and they're essentially indistinguishable from the human overlords. Anyways, it's a pretty easy read, not very long. I think it's only like 100 pages or so. And the language is not too complex. I was able to read it as a high schooler fairly easily. There are some themes in there that I didn't really pick up on when I was younger, but definitely pick up now. And it's very interesting to compare that to some of the things that I'm seeing within culture, within society today. And two scenes really come to mind for me that are really interesting. One of them is Napoleon, one of his first acts when they stage this coup d'etat and they take over the farm. Napoleon takes the pups from the dogs. There's dogs on the farm. He goes and takes the pups away from their parents and ends up educating them. And no one really knows what the hell he's teaching them. He has them in this school. He's the only one who interacts with them until the time comes for him to try and take complete power over the farm. And so he rolls out these pups that are no longer pups anymore. They're now full-grown dogs, and they're essentially his attack dogs. They listen to him. He's indoctrinated them, and that's how he's able to grasp the power on the farm. And this scene to me is actually pretty chilling and terrifying because it just goes to show you that if you want to have power in the future, the key to that power in the future is through the minds of the youth. Children are constantly going to be under attack ideologically and spiritually, emotionally, all of these different ways. And an attack doesn't just mean like they're, tearing them down. An attack can be a manipulation as well. And I talk pretty regularly about my disdain for how children are treated now, how childhood innocence is under attack. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that certain ideological forces in this world are focused on children, focused on indoctrinating them into certain ideologies. And yeah, it's just like fucking Napoleon sitting down with these dogs and trying to create his army for the future in order to gain power. If you want to attack a society or a culture, go after the kids. That's really the way to do it. Not like in a good way either. I'm not saying like, yeah, that's how we should do. We should go attack the kids. No, what we should be doing is be protecting the kids, trying to keep them in a state of innocence for as long as they need to develop appropriately, and then bring them into adulthood and teach them, help them grow, be parents. I also don't think that it's a coincidence that the author has the government take the children away from the parents. And what I see nowadays is a big fight between the state, the schools, and parents' rights, trying to take kids out of the home or trying to take them away from parents and taking power away from parents. And listen, I get it. There's some shit parents out there. But at the end of the day, a child is going to do best with their natural parents. So instead of trying to take power away from parents, we should be trying to make parents better. And that's what I'm doing here on this podcast, one step at a time. The other scene that I thought was interesting, or it's kind of more of like an ongoing theme throughout, is they have this list of rules that they have up on a wall that everyone can read. And once Napoleon gains power, his regime goes in and changes the rules like pretty much constantly. And when animals notice that the rules are changing, they're like gaslit into believing that, no, the rules have always been that way. You're just remembering it wrong. And they keep on saying that until the animals believe them and just accept it as truth. They also do this with like certain events that take place, certain battles or whatever it is. And they'll essentially just gaslight people and like, your memory is failing you. This is the way that it happened. This is the truth. That happens today constantly. I can't tell you how many times I like turn on the news and we'll see videos of people saying certain things in the past and then just completely saying like, I never said that, or this is the way it's always been. A huge example of that would just be like COVID, the lockdowns. I'm not going to dive deep into the politics of it. And like, if you're still scared of COVID and you're still scared and you think that we should be locked down and we should have lost all this power, whatever, I don't give a fuck. But there are certain things that we've learned since then that people were spouting as like gospel truth and essentially like railroading people who questioned it. If you questioned whether or not it was a good idea to lock down or to put masks on kids or to like prevent kids from being in person or any of the other really shitty things that we did during COVID, if you even questioned it, you were seen as this terrible person who was killing grandparents. Like, oh, you want to go out and breathe fresh air and go for a hike? Is that worth killing my grandmother over, you murderer? Fuck you. That's how it was, though. And I remember that. But you look at like the news now or the coverage and people just gloss over it or like pretend it didn't happen. They don't acknowledge that shit. They don't acknowledge that there were literally people on mainstream media and government officials saying shit like that to like normal people like us. It's all trying to be glossed over and we're trying to be gaslit to believe that events were different than how they actually happened. And it may work. Who knows? I'm not going to forget, but you know, someday I'm going to fucking die. So unless we're able to expose it or society's able to accept that this is what's happening, like it's going to work. It's going to be just like on the Animal Farm. Anyways, it's a good read. There's a lot of good ideas, symbolism in there. It's kind of eerie. It's kind of creepy. I mean, it's Orwell. It's dystopian. If you read it in high school like I did, I would suggest going back and rereading it again. I think you'd pick up a lot of new things in there, but just a slight suggestion for anyone that's looking for a book to read right now. And if that's a little too heavy for you, you know, maybe I'll come up with a little bit of a happier book suggestion for you on a later episode. Anyways, popping into the last subject that I've got for this week, something I actually just noticed a couple of days ago. I was on a Zoom call. It was like a quote unquote happy hour. And everyone I work with is younger than I am. I'm a middle-aged millennial dad at the ripe old age of 36 years old. I made a reference to Terminator. We were talking about AI and just how it's taking over certain jobs and eventually how it's all going to take over. And I was joking about Skynet. I said something about finding John Connor and everyone was looking at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm like, Terminator? Anyone? They're like, I'm like, yeah, no, this is all major themes from the movie Terminator where, you know, artificial intelligence takes over and there's like a big war and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, yeah, no, I had no clue what you're talking about. I'm like, fuck, am I that old now? Anyways, I just noticed that a lot of the like pop culture references that I've utilized essentially for my entire life growing up, all these ones that used to get huge laughs, they're starting to age out. And it's starting to scare me because I don't know if there's any really good pop culture references now that I can use to replace some of the old ones. But just, I wanted to go through some of the examples for all of you. And, you know, maybe at the end of this, you can all reassure me that I'm not that fucking old and that these are all still funny and relevant, and reassure me that these Gen Zers are just don't know what the fuck's going on. Here we go. Let's jump into the list real quick. Got Anchorman, Obviously, there's a bajillion fucking lines that I quote in there. Milk was a bad choice. I love lamp. 60% of the time, it works every time. All of these, great lines, but I feel like they're starting to fade out and people don't know what the hell you're talking about. Similarly, I quote Step Brothers all the time. Love that movie. And I was at a store and shit, we were like out to lunch or something and people were asking what we're going to do for the weekend. And I was just like, I'm not sure. Got a nice little Sunday planned out. Gonna go to Home Depot, maybe go to Bed Bath & Beyond, get some hand towels. I'm not sure if we're gonna have enough time. Not sure if we'll have enough time. Which, if you know anything, all of these I feel like are Will Ferrell movies too. It's just like random that they're all Will Ferrell movies. But that's Frank the Tank right there, talking about what him and his wife are gonna do. And everyone at the table was just like, what the hell is he talking about? Going to Home Depot and Bed Bath & Beyond. Is Bed Bath & Beyond even a store anymore? Didn't they just file bankruptcy? And I was just like, damn it. And the last straw was actually today. I'm recording this on Thursday, April 25th, and jumped onto my morning meeting for work and said, happy perfect date to everyone. And they all kind of just stared at me. And I was like, yeah, you just, it's not too hot, not too cold. All you need is a light jacket, and still just blank stares. And I was like, has anyone seen Miss Congeniality? Blank stares, nothing. And I'm like, yeah, today's April 25th. It's the perfect date. And, I just kind of sank back into my office chair and, came to the depressing realization that I'm old and I'm aging out. And my jokes and my references are not hitting with Gen Z. And so I'm going to need a full overhaul. I'm going to need to try and get some Riz, as the kids say nowadays, and figure this shit out. Because damn, it sucks when you get old and all of your funny references that you've been using forever, they don't hit anymore. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Is it just me? Is it that I'm getting old? Or do these fucking youngsters suck? Do they need to get out there, get cultured, watch some 90s and 2000s movies, and realize that the shit that they're watching nowadays pales in comparison? I'm not sure. I can't guarantee that I'm being unbiased. All I know is I have a strong urge to yell at kids, shake my cane, and tell them to get the fuck off my lawn. And that'll do it for this week's episode. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. I appreciate each and every one of you being here, and I hope that you got something out of it, maybe laughed a little bit. Maybe you're going to go read Animal Farm. Maybe you're going to go watch some of those movies that I mentioned so that way you get some of my fucking jokes. Either way, I do appreciate it. If you enjoy the content, give me a follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasting needs met. If you feel so inclined, definitely give me a 5-star review. It will help in one way, shape, or form eventually. And if you have any suggestions for the podcast, I'm actually going to frame this in a different way. If you have any advice for me or any suggestions for the podcast, shoot me a message, a DM on Instagram. My email's in the show notes. I've got a link with everything in there. My email address is in there. Send me a message. Let me know how you feel, any advice you have for the podcast. It's still very early on in its infancy, and I do want this to be something that's for everyone, not just for me, not just for the two of my friends that get my sense of humor, something that's helpful, beneficial, funny, entertaining to multiple people. So that's my ask for you. As always, if you think there's someone who would enjoy this podcast, enjoy this content, share it with them as well. All of the little podcast stations give you an option to share it, send them a link, but send them this episode. Send them one of the other ones that you maybe like. I really appreciate everyone helping out and getting the word out regarding this podcast. All of that being said, I appreciate all of you. I hope that you all have a fantastic weekend. And as always, be good, try hard, do your best.